Hi everybody, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. I'm throwing in an extra video this week because I am excited. We are finally done with the mechanical restoration on the 1952 Willys Overland pickup. It's been about 22 months since I started, and that's including all that time we lost with the engine. Over on the whiteboard here, these are the only things that we have left or had left to address. The heater hoses, which are just the defroster hoses, finally got those installed. I'll show you those in just a minute. Now the speedometer stopped working a while ago, so I just investigated that. I had disconnected the cable from the back of the speedometer itself because it was making a noise while you're going down the road. You could actually hear it. And when I pulled it out and got a better look at it, I could see the very tip of the interior cable itself had cracked. It was broken off. So I completely removed the old one and installed a brand new speedometer cable. It's in the truck already. I took the truck around my property a few times yesterday, and the speedometer needle looked like it was actually working, and the odometer was working again too. So at the end of the video, I'm going to take the truck for another drive, a little bit shorter than that last one we took, and we're going to see if the speedometer works. That would be really good news if the speedometer worked and it was just the cable that was the problem, because I don't know if we could find another one of those speedometers. Anyway, we're gonna find out at the end of this video. I just lubed all the springs, front and rear on the truck, so we're good to go there. And the rear seal, this is new. After I started driving the truck a little bit more, you know, to shake out the kinks and see what else might pop up after we started driving it, I noticed the rear pinion seal was leaking, and it looked like it had been leaking before as well, as something I just didn't notice with all the other drips of oil underneath the truck. And then the other three things that we've got on the bottom of the board here that aren't pressing issues: tires, they're old, they need to be replaced at some point. If I remember correctly, they're not quite 20 years old. So if this truck starts getting driven a lot more often, it'd probably be a good idea to change the tires, put new tires on it, and we've already talked about that. The battery is from 2018, so that is 6 or 7 years old at this point, and it's still working. I don't quite understand that. Normally the batteries I get last, 3 or 4 or 5 years, not 6 or 7 or 8 years. She's holding on right now, but that's something that's going to have to be replaced pretty soon because she's on borrowed time already. You remember the spare wheel that's on the truck is terribly bent and unusable, so we're going to have to perhaps replace it, or at least talk about that. So I'm going to cut to the content about the rear pinion seal, and we'll go from there. So here we are under the truck. This is the rear differential and of course the drive line, and you can see how it's wet right in here, and then it comes down and drips onto the floor from that point. So we need to drop the drive line, get the yoke off, and then I think get this cover off, and then we can replace that seal. So it's going to be a little bit of work, but it shouldn't be too bad if everything goes well. So it looks like those are 1/2 inch there, maybe 9/16 there. I'm going to get this removed without spilling those needle bearings. Now we can get to this big nut in here. Looks like there's a cotter key and a castle nut. Well, getting that cotter pin out was not fun. Now the trick will be to get this yoke off. Well, let me tell you guys a thing about removing this pinion yoke. This one was nearly impossible. I have been working on this for about 2 hours. I've got pullers, I've got tools. I could not get this thing to come off. What finally got it was this 2-arm puller. because the teeth on the bottom really gripped the base of the yoke well. It was so tight that I couldn't even move this screw with a wrench or a ratchet. I had to use my impact gun. I don't know what those are rated for. I want to say 700 foot-pounds. But even that impact gun on its highest setting would not budge it. So I got it on there, used the impact gun, and really gave it a good try. So everything was really under a lot of tension. And then I just got some heat and put a flame directly on the side of the bottom of the yoke and just held it there for maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes. And then finally it popped. So I didn't want to cut the video and just say, oh yeah, the yoke came off, no problem. I want to let you guys know how hard that was. Or maybe you'll get lucky and yours will come off more easily. I don't know. Now let's get this cup off, and I think we can finally replace that seal. Have I ever mentioned that I hate working on things over my head? And have I ever mentioned that I hate working on things underneath the vehicle on my back? Goodness gracious. Well, to make things even more frustrating, I ordered the wrong seal. I thought I had the right seal, and I thought this whole thing was only going to take me 90 minutes, but it's going to be another week before I get the right seal. Let's get this thing up on the bench and take a better look at it and measure it at least. So we're going to need a gasket for this and a new one of these. Okay, welcome back everybody. It's been about a week since that last clip, and I finally hold the correct seal in my hand. It's just a little guy, about 2 inches outer diameter, and I don't remember what the inner diameter is, like 1.3 or something like that. It's a strange size. But the reason that I ordered the wrong one to begin with is because I did not realize we had kind of a unique rear axle in the truck. It's called a Timken rear axle, sometimes nicknamed clamshell, and it's completely different from the other Willys vehicles' rear axles. They were standard equipment in the trucks, from what I understand. The whole thing about the rear axle was completely different, so that was my fault. But we can get on with the installation again now. I'm just going to make a gasket for this cover for us. I use the flat side of a little ball peen hammer to cut the outer edge of the gasket. And then I use the peen side, the round side, to find the holes. As far as the inner diameter of the gasket goes, there's not a defined edge on this cone piece in there. It's just kind of sloped and diagonal. So I'm just going to press down with my hand a little bit and feel where it is, and then we'll just use scissors to cut that out. Okay, there's what we got so far. All right, all done. Custom gasket made in less than 5 minutes. Now, before we crawl under the truck again, we're going to press the seal in, and it goes right into the bottom. The flat side is always the outer side, and the inside with the rubber lip always faces towards the oil. So it's going to go in like this. I'm going to smear just a thin layer of grease on the outside of the seal, just to assist it in going in. All right, I've got my seal driver tool. That's the exact outer diameter of the seal. gonna go for it here. And then we want to make sure it's flush with the inside of the outer ring. We'll give it one more tap, just because we mean business. There we go. Now I'm going to take a little bit more grease and I'm going to grease the seal itself. A little bit of grease in here will actually help the seal do its job. All right, I'm all set to reinstall everything. I'm going to do all this off camera because you guys saw how everything came apart. I do have to clean up this piece a little bit first. The only two things that I'm going to mention are, number one, I am going to put some RTV on both sides of the gasket so we get a good seal there. And then the big nut that holds the yoke on, we're going to torque this to 100 foot-pounds. So I'm going to go get this done and I'll bring you back in just a minute. So the seal is installed in the truck. Everything went pretty well with the installation. The only thing I wanted to mention is that the output shaft, or the input shaft, whatever you call it, the one that's coming out of the front of the differential, where the seal rides, there's a little bit of a groove there. It's not really a groove, it's more of a small indentation. I didn't see that when I was taking everything apart because everything was so dirty, but when I cleaned it up and when I was polishing it, yeah, there's a little bit of an indentation there around right where the seal rides. So hopefully the seal will still work and that won't be an issue. But the only way to find out is to drive it and look under the truck when we come back. So I'm gonna let the truck sit overnight, give that RTV a chance to set up on that gasket that we made. Then we'll take the truck for a short drive. We'll check the speedometer. I'll show you the new heater hose that we installed, and we'll check the rear oil seal. So I will see everybody tomorrow. Okay, it's finally time to take the truck for a drive. We need to check the rear pinion seal when we get back to see if it's still leaking or not. As far as the speedometer goes and the new cable we installed, I think we have about a 50-50 chance of the speedometer working again. I'm not super confident about it, but it might work. When I had the cable off the back of the speedometer, I used a tool to get in there and see if I could spin the speedometer with the tool, and I could. So logic would dictate that if I could spin it manually with the tool, the cable should spin it as well, right? Unless something is broken internally, and that very well could be. First, I want to show you these new defroster heater hoses that I installed. Here they are. I got really nice quality hoses. They're nice and sturdy. You know, they're not going to, collapse or kink or anything like that. And I'm happy with the way I've got them run as well. They are not in the way of anything. And of course, the right one runs up to this defroster vent, and the left one runs up to this defroster vent. So let's go take this beauty for a drive and see what we find here. I was going to put a list together of all the things that I fixed on the truck in the last 22 months, but there's too much stuff. Of course, you can go back to the first video and watch them all over again in sequence. I haven't started the truck for about 2 weeks, so gonna give it 3 pumps on the pedal, maybe a little bit of choke. There she goes. We got a full tank of gas, oil pressure, ammeter's working, everything's working now, and speedometer again, 50-50 chance on that, so let's find out. I'll let the truck warm up a little bit before we hit the highway. Well, it pulls this hill no problem. Second gear, I had power to spare. Isn't it a beautiful view from up here? That's our little valley. And this is our halftime report on the truck. Let me peek my head under there and see if I can see if the rear pinion seal's leaking or not. I don't know if you can see that with the lighting under here, but she's as dry as a bone. So far so good there. I've got the heater valve closed on the engine, you know, to stop the hot coolant from going to the heater core. I've had that closed this whole time just to make sure the engine won't overheat with it that way. It shouldn't, and it doesn't. The engine's running right at temperature. Now the speedometer is working and the odometer is working. The only caveat to this now is that it seems to be about 10 mile per hour off. So when the needle is on the 3 indicating 30 miles an hour, you're actually going 40. You know, halfway between the 3 and the 4. Instead of being 35, that would be 45, and that's about max speed for this truck. Before we head back down the mountain, we're going to check the underneath the hood just to make sure nothing strange is going on in there. It is quiet, isn't it? Especially when you're sitting at a stoplight with other ambient noises. It's hard for me to even hear the engine. You guys want to hear this horn? Okay, I'm going to enjoy the rest of this drive with the camera off. I'll see you guys back at the shop in just a minute. Well, here we are, and what a pleasant drive that was. That was actually about 20 miles. I had intended to make it a shorter trip, but I was just enjoying myself and I kept going and going and going. Anyway, now let's get under the truck and check that pinion seal once again, see how we're doing. She is still 100% dry. The only reason there's any surprise in my voice is, you know, we found that little indentation in the pinion shaft itself. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't huge, but it was right where the seal rides. So I was afraid that that might cause a leak for us, but it did not. That new seal did the trick, and it's not leaking at all around that gasket that we made either. That's all sealed up nice and tight. So another oil leak fixed and crossed off the list. And the speedometer works, mostly. It's funny how things go on these old vehicles sometimes. When it was starting to fail, or I should say when the cable was starting to fail, the needle was kind of bouncing and making a weird noise, and then it stopped working at all. I replaced the cable. Now we got a nice smooth needle. The odometer works, of course, but it's about 10 mile an hour short of what we're actually doing. So that's a bit of a head scratcher, and I don't think there's anything I can do about that. So I'll just have to leave it like that, which is totally fine. If it shows 30, you're going 40. If it shows 20, you're probably going 30. And let me tell you about this engine. She did not overheat. Up and down that big hill, driving it through town, stoplights, she didn't protest one iota. And when I got back from the drive and parked it, I just let the motor run for a few minutes just to listen to it, and she sounds as good as she did when we started. So no issues there. That motor ended up being quite a challenge for both us and the engine builder, but in the end we have an excellent L134 Go Devil 4-cylinder engine with a warranty. The only thing left on the truck that I'm aware of that still needs to be repaired is the windshield wiper motor. If you look close, you can see that cracked up here by that mount, and I don't even know if the motor works. This motor runs on vacuum only, so you'd hook a vacuum line up to that port there down to the intake manifold, and that's how the wipers would work. They'd be kind of jerky and they would change with the RPM of the engine and stuff like that, but that's how it was designed. So I'll talk to my cousin, see if he wants to fix that wiper motor or not. So I'm going to get great pleasure in wiping off these 4 remaining items. We can move the Willys header down there. We'll think about tires and battery another time and decide if we want a new spare wheel or not. So this concludes the mechanical restoration on the 1952 Willys Overland pickup truck. 22 months with 24 videos, actually 25 videos if you include that 23.5 video update I did a while back. So 25 videos. And I know there's a lot of you out there that have been following this video series since day one. So from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you very much for watching, supporting the channel that way, liking the videos, commenting, helping me figure things out, helping me with parts, because before we started this, I'd never worked on a Jeep before. And after all the work on this truck, I have learned so much about it and about Jeeps from this area in general. That's one of the reasons I like to find new things to work on, because even though it's nice to work on, you know, Ford tractors or Model Ts or something I'm more comfortable with, you know, doing things like this is almost like going to school. I've essentially been attending Willys Jeep School in the last 22 months. I'm still waiting on my diploma though. They say it's in the mail. Anyway, if you want to see more of this Jeep in the future and my other projects as well, I'm always trying to work on something different. Please subscribe to the channel, like, comment, all that stuff helps the channel grow. Check out antiquecarsandstuff.com, and I hope you all stick around for the next chapter on this Jeep, whatever that chapter ends up being. I hope you stick around for that, because I can't wait to see what it is either. So I'll say so long for now. Thanks for everything, and I'm going to leave you with a hot start on the Jeep because she starts almost immediately when, you know, after it's gotten warm.